Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us once again. We've got lots of good stuff to talk about again today. So a guy opens fire at the Potawatomi Casino, injures a woman. Two things. How in the world does something like this happen in such a public place? And why in the world has he been released from police custody without being charged with a crime? We'll also talk about what looks to be an increasingly dysfunctional Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors, which is now constantly fighting with County Executive Chris Abele. And we'll talk about a state budget which now is in the hands of Governor Scott Walker. What will he do? All right, let me introduce everybody. We have longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. And you know Denise Callaway, community affairs and public relations professional. Rick Horowitz is going to be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, let's talk first about the shooting the other day at the Potawatomi Casino in Milwaukee's Menominee Valley. A guy opens fire. One lady is injured. The guy gets wrestled to the ground by onlookers. Two things we have to talk about. Does a giant casino, which attracts millions of people, tons of cash, need much better security measures in place? And secondly, you would think this was captured on a zillion different security cameras. The guy was arrested, but then released without being charged with any crime. How does that happen?
Okay, in your second question first, how does that happen? Did he post bond or bail, I think? Did he?
On an unrelated crime.
Okay, all right. Maybe, just maybe, the Milwaukee Police Department figures they got the wrong guy. And so that could be the reason they let him out. Now, as to your first question, does it need a better security system? It doesn't have any security system. The security people are, in addition to being unarmed, they're not very young and they're not in great physical condition. They're basically useless and are told that your job, if something like this does break out in the casino, is to make mental notes or keep track of what's going on, to be an observer. Well, that's not very reassuring to the many people you've got in there. And the gunman, imagine that. There are warning signs posted around Potawatomi. The gunman just ignored those. Of course, he or she is going to know that no one in there has a gun. The security people are unarmed. So of course, it's very easy for a person to walk in there armed and do what this individual did. I say that the Potawatomi, and I believe that they have the financial wherewithal to do this, should try to make an agreement with the Milwaukee police and get police officers in there, or at least some kind of metal detector system where people have to walk through, because right now, there's absolutely zero security in that building.
You know, I don't think anybody thought about this really a lot, Denise, until this happened. But then when it did happen, you think, okay, I go to the Bradley Center, you know, I get patted down or have to walk by a wand. Right. I go to Miller Park, I have to go through the detector. Should they have to do this at a casino as well, especially with all this money and liquor around?
Well, a bit of, as we've now discovered, a dangerous combination. Absolutely. When you have a situation where you have large numbers of people who are entering a very public space, and there is alcohol that's involved, which always makes things much dicier, they absolutely need to do this. I think most people would have been stunned when they do know that there is security at the casino to know that these folks are not armed. And beyond that, it doesn't seem like they really had a plan for what they would do if a scenario like the one that unfolded earlier in the week did happen. What do we do? Who do we call? You know, there are reports that the security guards were the ones who were running away as fast as everybody else. So, Kevin, I'm not sure what kind of mental notes they could make, you know, unless they have eyes in the back of their head.
Not when they're hiding under a table.
So I do think that they need to have a very proactive security system. They do need to take a look at having metal detectors in there, and they do need to have some kind of force that's there. I'm not sure if MPD needs to be involved, but they need to have some kind of security force there that actually does potentially provide protection to people. And that's whether they're in the casino or, for that matter, when they're leaving the casino. Some people leave the casino with a lot of money. And I think it would be disheartening to think about the fact that these are folks who don't have any kind of protection, and that it's a security system that, being kind, I think we could call lax, that really is protecting them when they're on Potawatomi property.
At the same time, if it's an entertainment facility, do you want guys walking around with guns?
Yeah, I don't. As a matter of fact, I do not want armed guards there. I've said this before, I don't buy into the NRA position that more guns mean more safety. If you've got a crowd of people panicking because some guy's firing shots, the last thing you need is more guys firing shots in a crowd. And you know, these people who are hired as private security, there's a reason why they're hired as private security, and they've gotten jobs in private security rather than on a police force. They're cop wannabes. They're people who wanted to be cops, wanted to get on a police force, and were rejected for one reason or another. There's a whole different kind of background checks that go into, you know, people hired in these jobs. I don't know that you'd be any safer with a lot of people who do not have proper training, you know, packing deadly weapons in crowds of people. Yeah, there definitely should be some connection so that police can get there quickly if there's a problem. There's no question about that. And you know,
What about metal detectors? They're patting people down.
I don't have any problem with metal detectors there. And in fact, I've heard they say, you know, there's hardly ever been any incidents in there involving guns. And I have heard, you know, anecdotally, that's simply not true. In fact, people go in the bathrooms and blow their brains out. And it's a very emotional place. It's a very volatile place. We're talking about, you know, people who lose fortunes and destroy their lives. And you know, that's a dangerous. It's a dangerous place to be. We've probably all been in casinos, and we expect a lot of security and a lot of surveillance, mainly because they have their surveillance there for their own employees to keep them from stealing money. But the truth of the matter is, you have to get the idea now that there's a lot to be done there.
You mentioned MPD, but won't a criticism be that, okay, if there aren't, they always complain there aren't enough cops to man the streets of Milwaukee. Do we have enough to put in a casino?
Well,
or should they do what some of the festivals do and hire off-duty cops?
That's an idea, and you rarely see problems at the ethnic festivals. It's a Milwaukee police officer's dream to be given that assignment to stroll around the Summerfest grounds. But I think, given the density of people in that building, and now having seen what can happen, where you have to depend on innocent bystanders to tackle a gunman, I think it would behoove at least the exploration of this idea to get Milwaukee police officers in there, because they are well trained. They know what to do in a situation, and they could serve as a deterrent to any future episodes like this.
Or the Potawatomi, because this is considered their tribal land, could actually have their own tribal police force, which is also well trained, police that area, but they've got to do something more than what they're doing now.
All right, next topic. You know, there's no love lost between some members of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors and County Executive Chris Abele. Abele was supportive of recently passed state legislation which will likely lead to a downsized board whose members make a lot less money than they do right now. This week, one board member yells at an Abele aide, "We're going to have your head on a stick." A few days later, Abele's top staff lawyer was fired by the board. Is the board just trying to maintain relevance by demanding it be allowed to share power?
No, they're being petty and ugly. Chris Abele, the county executive, was petty and ugly to go to the Republican legislature to destroy the power of the board, to be a check over him. I think everybody's at fault here. The young woman that they fired as head of the Corporation Council, a young, black, professional female, was an outstanding individual. I've heard from people who work directly with her. And Kathleen Ehlers, who Abele has appointed to take over the mental health.
She's next.
They already threatened to get rid of her or not to approve her, and she just barely, you know, skated through for another month or so for them to keep. It is turning ugly. Chris Abele says of the law that he passed to basically destroy the power of the county board to be any check over him, it's not personal. Well, yeah, it was personal when you destroy people's jobs, and now they're getting very personal towards him, and a lot of people are caught in the middle that don't deserve to be caught in the middle. It is ugly. It is ugly, and there are three parties involved in making it ugly. The county executive, the state legislature and now the county board. And I don't think there are any heroes here, and it's going to just not be very pretty when you start, destroying people's lives.
I know it sounds pie in the sky, but don't Milwaukee County residents and taxpayers deserve much better behavior from their elected officials?
Oh, I don't think that's pie in the sky at all. I think we do deserve better behavior from our elected officials. And I think whether or not they realize it, the county board is really playing with its actions over the past week, it's really playing into the hands of those folks who have said that they're irrelevant and that we do need to have a part-time board. And, I don't know if maybe they're kind of forgetting that, there's a referendum that's going to be in place to decide all of this. And if they do these things that I think that some of them see as exerting power, I think some of them see it as getting back at the county executive. These are things that not just taxpayers, but voters are going to remember when they go to the polls to make decisions about whether or not they actually want a full-time county board or a part-time county board. This kind of behavior that seems, at least to everyone who's looking on the outside, to be rather petty, is not the kind of behavior people want from their elected officials. And it's certainly not the kind of behavior you want to see happen on a full-time basis. So I think at the end of the day, in their efforts to exert power and to show that they still do have the ability to influence what happens in the county, they're hurting themselves in the long run. And that also, at the end of the day, hurts Milwaukee County. Milwaukee County is not in such great shape that we can deserve to have a dysfunctional county board and a county executive where they're both yelling back and forth at each other. That is not governance. That's what happens on the playground when you're in third grade. So somebody needs to be the adult in the room and step forward and decide they're going to take care of the citizen's business, and the citizen's business is not deciding whether you're going to have somebody's head on a stick or you're going to fire somebody else, or whether or not you may have, as some county supervisors feel, acted inappropriately to try to remove their power. It's where we are right now. It's up to the county board to decide whether or not this is an issue that goes away and allows them to do their work, focus, and tell taxpayers this is why you need us, as opposed to doing things that would make some taxpayers say, we don't need you at all.
Do some of the county board supervisors not want to accept the fact that the law is being changed, their jobs are not going to be as important as they once were?
They're in total denial. They have become bitter and angry and petty and personal and vindictive. They were dysfunctional, and whether Joel likes it or not, the legislature spoke because many people see this as a dysfunctional board, and they are becoming even more dysfunctional. They won't even tell you why they fired this qualified individual. Well, we all know why they did it. It's because they know they're on their way out, and they are going to go out guns a-blazing, and they're going to do all these things. They're going to get back at people that put them in the position that they are going to be in. And what little trust and faith the voting public in Milwaukee County had with them is being eroded now, and all this does is to serve to increase the margin by which they will be tossed on their ears in that referendum next spring. And I think that it's unfortunate that Ms. Walker played the sexist, racist cards. Those are not the reasons that she lost her job and was fired. It's much simpler than that. They know she's qualified, but they're trying to get back at Chris Abele.
Can I say something to that? Because you bring up that phrase quite a bit here about playing a race card or playing a sex card. When a young black professional qualified employee has something done to her that would never be done to a white head of the corporation council or a male head of the corporation council. You and I have covered the county board and the corporation council, and we know that traditionally it has been headed by white males who are kind of old political hacks.
Who stay there forever.
Old political hacks. This is a bright young woman and
totally
a bright young African-American woman, and something was done to her that they would have never contemplated doing to and never did do to white males heading that department.
Makes it even worse because...
but don't say, don't play the race card. We're allowed to talk about unequal treatment and inequality in this society. And we shouldn't be accused of playing the race card every time we do, because if you don't talk about it, if you don't bring it out in the open, the fact that there's unequal treatment going on, we'll never be able to overcome it.
My point, Joel, is that she wasn't fired because of race.
We
She
don't
was-
know
she was
because
fired-
they aren't saying, but I'm saying they did something to
She
her
was
that they
fired
wouldn't do to
because
anyone
you got
else.
13 kids on the county board acting like children who said, we don't like Chris Abele, so we're going after this poor woman.
All right, next topic. So the state budget has been approved by one single vote and now sits on the governor's desk. It cuts taxes, expands the vouchers program, holds the line on UW tuition. Do you expect Governor Walker, Denise, to make any big super changes with his veto pen, or is he just going to say, okay, you did a good job, I sign it?
I expect that he's going to make some changes in the veto pen. I think that one of the things that they're talking loudest about and that people are the most upset about are the changes in the middle of the night that were made, again, with no public hearing, as has been in the case for the vast majority of the non-fiscal issues that are in this budget. And that has to do with really the cloak of secrecy that this legislature decided could exist around around voucher schools not having to report certain data. It's just when we talk about transparency, and the thing that's so interesting is that one of the things that was discussed early on in the budget process was greater transparency for voucher schools. And what's happened now is they've actually taken a giant step back from where they were in terms of the public and parents being able to access information about these schools. So I think he certainly is going to have to make some changes there. It'll be interesting to decide how he uses his veto pen too when it comes to the expansion of school choice throughout the entire state of Wisconsin. There's been, again, tremendous backlash on the parts of many local school communities saying, why are we doing this? It isn't working in Milwaukee. Kids in voucher schools are actually scoring worse than kids in MPS. Why are we doing this? So I think I expect to see some changes there in terms of putting some transparency and accountability back into voucher schools. But I also expect to see that there's going to be some way within his veto power, he's really going to work to try to expand vouchers the way he would like to expand.
There is some speculation that what he'll do is say, okay, the voucher program expands statewide, and then crosses out all the caps and say it's a statewide program, there are no caps.
Yeah, that would be a change for the worse instead of a change for the better, which Denise is hoping for. I would love to think that he might make some improvements, but I have no faith that he will. He's been a supporter of voucher schools, from the start, and if anything, he'll make it worse with his veto pen. But he's got no reason to treat anyone else fairly or to treat the public schools. He's never showed any respect for the public schools. One of the other changes in the middle of the night was this crazy thing of bounty hunters in Wisconsin that virtually no one in the criminal justice system wants to see happen. And as a matter of fact, the people who put it in have never said why it should happen. Every once in a while, the Journal tries to explain why they might have done it because they aren't saying, I'll tell you why they did it. The lobbyists for the Bounty Bail Association, Cash Bail Association, it's the same lobbyists for these stores that the rent-to-own places in the inner city. It's sleazy businesses represented by sleazy lobbyists who are now going to give a lot of money to the Republicans that passed it. And nobody wants it. No decent person in the criminal justice system wants it at all. I think the biggest thing about this budget to me is the Republicans playing working middle-class people for fools. Saying, boy, look at this, we're giving you huge tax cuts. No, we're giving you $100 and don't spend it all in one place. We're going to give 2/3 of the tax cuts to the richest people in the state who don't need it, and you think we're helping you out. You think we're really giving you a break, and you're a dope if you think that, because as the rich get richer, you are continuing to get poorer. They could have spent that money to create jobs in Wisconsin, which people desperately need, but no, they would rather give it to rich people instead of using it for something worthwhile, like education.
I predict that bounty program, I think he vetoes the whole thing.
I think he will. as I mentioned a couple weeks ago here on the program, and I hope he does.
You have more faith in him than I do.
I think he'll veto that whole booting the Center for Investigative Journalism project out of UW. Right. I think he'll veto that. And as far as the very modest expansion of choice and charter schools, you two fear that he's going to do something magical with his pen that will suddenly make it a statewide program. He has promised the two Senate Republicans, Mike Ellis and Luther Olson, who opposed a larger expansion. The governor has promised them that he would not go beyond what's in that budget. So I don't expect any far-reaching expansion of choice or voucher schools. If I could talk about the financial aspects of the budget, though, the very strong budget. If you go back to the last budget under Governor Doyle and Democrats, the 2009 through 11 state budget, even with the help of $2 billion in federal stimulus money, that budget still had a $4 billion hole in it. And how did they react? They increased taxes by $5 billion. They increased taxes and fees on cell phones and cigarettes and capital gains and musical downloads. Anything was fair game. And if that wasn't bad enough, if you got sick and had to go to the hospital, they taxed you for that too. Now you come to this budget and you've got $1 billion in tax relief, over almost $700 million in income tax. You are on the path to responsible budgeting once again. A tuition freeze for UW system students, an increase in per pupil spending in public education statewide. At last, we finally now don't have to worry about the next state budget having a multi-billion-dollar deficit attached to it.
I'm shocked that you included health care in that, since this budget includes turning down expansion of health care for poor people.
And tens of thousands of people who will be without health care.
Absolutely. And not only that, the state would have made more than $100 million from federal funds on top of paying for those people's health care. But, you know, there's so much federal funds being turned down in this budget and things being done in this budget that hurt the economy of the state. Here we are, 44th in the country in job creation, and virtually nothing is done in this budget to create any jobs. You know, he's totally ignored, you know, the needs of the state while he's running for president and running around doing ideological things to make sure that the taxpayers in this state end up paying not only for public schools but for private schools. And doubling the number of schools that you have to pay for is not an economically sound idea.
Well, if I may quickly respond, the mere fact that you lower the tax burden in one of the highest tax states in America
lower the tax burden for wealthy people
will lead investors to be more confident in investing in job creation in our economy.
All right.
About time they did that.
Well, in Madison, they wrapped up the budget this week, including a number of pretty controversial provisions having to do with abortion. Our colleague Rick Horowitz has his own opinion about those provisions of the bill. But as a writer, he's focusing today on the words supporters are using to defend those provisions. Rick.
Hey, welcome back to Language Protection Patrol, and we've got a hot case for you this week, a whole series of assaults on the English language by the people who like to call themselves pro-life. The scene of the crime? Wisconsin and other states that are forcing women who choose to terminate their pregnancies to be subjected to ultrasound examinations, medically unnecessary ultrasound examinations, and graphic descriptions of the results before they're permitted to proceed. The perps? Oh, the usual assortment of zealots, leaders of anti-abortion groups, state legislators, even certain talk show panelists who used to work for state legislators. They say they're in favor of women having full information. What they mean is they're in favor of force-feeding information. Or maybe we should call it attempted brainwashing. And the linguistic crimes go way beyond that. They keep talking, for instance, about opportunity. The opportunity for the fetus to be seen by the pregnant woman. The opportunity for the woman to be told about ultrasound exams. But if you can't turn down the exam, and under these laws you can't, it's not an opportunity at all. It's an obligation. It's a mandate. And they don't stop there. The zealots say the ultrasound will allow a woman to see the fetus's heartbeat. Actually, allow doesn't quite capture it. They don't allow a woman to see the heartbeat. They pretty much insist on it. But wait, there's more. They're also talking about rights. The woman's right to be fully informed. Even the right to choose which type of ultrasound she's subjected to. The intrusive kind or the really intrusive kind. I don't know about you, but those don't sound like rights to me. any more than in those old communist police states that used to announce the unanimous re-election of their particular dictator with a turnout rate of 99%. Would you say those poor trampled down citizens were exercising their right to vote? A right is a power you have, something you're able to exercise or not as you choose. If you're forced to exercise it, it's not a right, not in English anyway. It's a requirement, a command. So what do you think? Book them for repeated assaults on the language? You bet! And that's nothing compared to their assault on vulnerable women.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.